The AquaTru Classic and the Bluevua RO100ROPOT are two of the biggest countertop reverse osmosis systems you can buy right now. And here's what makes this matchup interesting. Out of every countertop RO we've tested, the AquaTru Classic is hands down our highest rated pick, while the Bluevua ROPOT is one of the absolute best sellers on Amazon. So this is basically our top pick going head to head with the crowd favorite. Which one should you buy? The AquaTru Classic, fully NSF certified for contaminant reduction, or the ROPOT with its glass carafe? And if you go with the Classic, should you upgrade to its smart version, which adds app-based water monitoring? And likewise for Bluevua, should you upgrade to the ROPOT UV, which adds an ultraviolet purification stage as an extra layer of germ protection? Well, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly that. Let's get into it. So a couple of videos ago, we took a deep dive into AquaTru's countertop RO lineup, comparing the Classic, Classic Smart, Carafe, and Carafe Smart. And then in our last video, we looked at Bluevua's countertop systems, including the RO100ROPOT, RO100ROPOT Lite, and their UV-equipped versions. And after spending that much time with both brands, we figured it was time for a proper head-to-head comparison. Now, to keep things simple and to keep this video from turning into a feature-length film, we're focusing on the two larger systems, the Classic and the ROPOT. These are the models designed for bigger households. Bluevua specifically recommends the ROPOT for households of 3 or more people. AquaTru doesn't make the same recommendation for the Classic, but based on its size and capacity, it seems aimed at a similar audience. And looking forward, in our next video, we'll have the two smaller models compete. So the AquaTru Carafe versus the Bluevua ROPOT Lite. So if you're trying to decide between these two, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that comparison. All right, we tested both the AquaTru Classic and Bluevua ROPOT as part of our big countertop reverse osmosis system comparisons, where we sent water samples to an independent lab to measure real-world contaminant reduction. And we ran a full set of usability tests: filtration speed, wastewater, ease of use, all of it. And we're going to start this comparison by looking at filtration performance, the most interesting part, obviously. So here's what we did. We set up and primed each system exactly according to the official instructions. Then we took water samples before and after filtration, and we sent those to a lab to check for contaminant reduction. Now, what's important to understand is that AquaTru Classic and Classic Smart are basically the same machine, using the exact same filtration process and filter cartridges. The only difference is that the Smart version adds app integration for things like water quality monitoring and filter status. In other words, our lab results for the regular Classic also apply to the Classic Smart and vice versa, which is great because it provides us a broader picture of the real-world filtration performance. And the same applies to the Bluevua ROPOT and its UV version. Here, we didn't test the UV version firsthand, but that doesn't matter because it's 100% identical to its non-UV counterparts, except from the UV stage. And so lab results equally apply to both versions. And finally, our usual disclaimer: before and after laboratory testing like this isn't an exact science. Handling errors, cross-contamination, or even natural fluctuations in the water supply can affect results. And we can only test for contaminants that are actually present in our water. Okay. So in our first round of lab testing, the AquaTru Classic achieved 100% reduction of chlorine, all 4 disinfection byproducts that were tested. So bromodichloromethane, bromoform, dibromochloromethane, and chloroform, as well as copper, barium, boron, zinc, nitrate, and uranium. Strontium reduction was 96%, and fluoride reduction ranged from 41% to 99%. That fluoride range was due to limitations with the testing method used by the lab. For our second round of testing, we used a completely different AquaTru unit, a different water supply, a different laboratory, and a different fluoride testing method. This time, the Classic achieved 100% reduction of fluoride, along with 100% reduction of everything else: chlorine, 3 disinfection byproducts, copper, iron, manganese, barium, boron, strontium, and nitrate. Taken together, the 2 rounds of testing produced some of the strongest filtration results we've ever seen from a countertop RO system. Now let's take a look at the Bluevua ROPOT, which performed similarly well. In round 1, it achieved 100% reduction of chlorine, the same 4 disinfection byproducts, as well as copper, iron, aluminum, barium, zinc, and lithium. Boron reduction was 90%, strontium was reduced by 98%, and fluoride reduction ranged from 76% to 99%. Then in our second round of testing, using a different filter set, water supply, and lab, the ROPOT achieved 100% reduction across every contaminant we tested, including boron, strontium, and fluoride. So from a contaminant reduction standpoint, both systems delivered exceptional results. Both the AquaTru and Bluevua went from nearly perfect in round 1 to perfect in round 2. This is one of the rare comparisons where both systems performed at an extremely high level. As for TDS reduction, both systems were identical in round 1 at 91%. In round 2, the AquaTru achieved a higher reduction rate, 94%, compared to 86% for the Bluevua. However, the Bluevua was tested with its remineralization filter installed, which intentionally adds minerals back into the water and increases TDS. So this isn't necessarily a filtration performance advantage for the AquaTru. We'll talk more about remineralization a little later in the video. You're going to want to stick around for that. But first, let's look at potential leaching. In our first round of testing, the AquaTru Classic introduced a small amount of aluminum into the filtered water, about 0.05 parts per million. Now, that's precisely 12 times lower than the strictest health-based guideline we could find, which is 0.6 ppm. And so we don't consider this a health concern. That said, of course, our preference is always for a filter not to add contaminants to the water in the first place. The good news is that when we tested a completely different AquaTru unit in round 2, no aluminum was detected at all. As for the Bluevua ROPOT, we didn't detect any contaminant leaching in either round of testing, which is great. If you'd like to dig deeper into the data, we've linked our full comparison sheet in the description below. Now, that's going to include all of our lab results, our complete analysis of every countertop reverse osmosis system we've tested so far, product links, and discount codes. And if you want even more information, head over to bos-water.com where you'll find all our reviews and comparison sheets. All right, back to the AquaTru Classic and Bluevua ROPOT. Both use the standard filtration process for a reverse osmosis system, a combination of sediment and carbon pre- and post filters paired with a reverse osmosis membrane. There are some smaller differences between these two units, but the core filtration technology is very similar. As for taste and odor, there isn't much separating the two. The AquaTru Classic produced water that tasted perfectly clean and neutral with no noticeable odor. The Bluevua ROPOT was very similar. The water was also clean, neutral, and odor-free. The only difference was when using the optional remineralization filter, there was a nice, slight mineral taste. Next up, NSF certifications for contaminant reduction. Now, this is one of the biggest differences. Both the AquaTru Classic and Classic Smart are essentially fully certified against NSF standards 42, 53, 58, and 401. Combined, those certifications cover more than 80 different substances, including VOCs, PFOA and PFOS, cyst, arsenic 5, chromium 6, fluoride, lead, nitrate and nitrite, selenium, chlorine, chloramine, pharmaceuticals, pesticides, and microplastics. And the reason we put so much weight on NSF certifications is that the testing behind them is far more extensive than what we can realistically do ourselves. I mean, while we do believe our lab testing is incredibly valuable, it's a snapshot by comparison. So for example, we only test each filter at the beginning of its life, whereas most NSF certification requires testing through the full rated lifespan and beyond. That said, as of filming, the Bluevua ROPOT has no contaminant certified for reduction. Bluevua once told us there are 2 pending certifications for TDS and chromium 3. However, those have been pending since at least 2024. On a more positive note, Bluevua has conducted third-party testing on roughly 90 contaminants, including lead, arsenic, and chromium 6, among others. That's certainly better than having no testing at all. However, third-party testing and NSF certification are not the same thing. Most importantly, some of Bluevua's testing has been conducted at the beginning of filter life rather than throughout the filter's lifespan. So in this category, the AquaTru Classic wins without debate. And in fact, we're still not aware of any other countertop reverse osmosis system that comes close to matching AquaTru's current certification portfolio. If independently certified contaminant reduction is a high priority for you, and it definitely is for us, then the AquaTru Classic has a very significant advantage here. So taking everything we've discussed so far into account, the AquaTru Classic earns a perfect 5 out of 5 for filtration, and the Bluevua ROPOT lands at 4.5 out of 5. That difference might seem a bit harsh, but it's our highest score for a filter without official NSF certifications. Okay, moving on to setup. Both of these systems are about as straightforward as countertop RO filters get. In both cases, the process is essentially the same. Install the filters, wash the feed tank and carafe or clean tank, fill the feed tank with cold tap water, place it on the unit along with the carafe or clean tank, run the recommended number of filtration cycles, making sure to empty both feed and clean containers between each cycle, and you're ready to go. Both systems include clear illustrated instructions, and both also provide setup videos online if you'd rather follow along visually. The AquaTru does get a small usability boost here thanks to its color-coded filters, which make it very easy to see where each filter belongs. We did run into one unexpected issue with our first AquaTru Classic. When we first set it up, the unit wouldn't operate properly, but after some troubleshooting, we discovered that water had gotten into the front handle, but once we let it dry out, everything worked normally and we didn't experience any additional issues. If you're considering the Classic Smart version, setup is just as simple. There's a QR code included that takes you directly to the app download page, and both the manual and the quick start guide explain the connection process. We found the app pairing process to be very straightforward and honestly didn't really need the instructions. Overall, we'd consider setup extremely easy on both systems. When it comes to everyday use, both of these systems are refreshingly simple because they follow a very straightforward workflow. One full feed tank produces one full tank or carafe of filtered water. With the AquaTru Classic, you fill the feed tank, place it on the base, and the system automatically begins filtering. The purified water collects in the front tank, while the wastewater is collected in the rear tank. Once the cycle is complete, you simply empty the wastewater, refill the feed tank, and start the process again. The Bluevua ROPOT works in much the same way. You fill the tank, place it on the base, and start a filtration cycle. The main difference is that the ROPOT lets you choose between 3 output volumes before filtering, so roughly a quarter carafe, a half carafe, or a full carafe. It's a small feature, but it's convenient if you don't always need a full batch of water. Overall, both systems are easy to understand, easy to operate, and they require very little day-to-day effort. So if you've never owned a countertop RO system before, neither one should feel intimidating. Another thing we really like is that they process a full batch and then store the purified water. So that makes it instantly available when you need it. So that may not sound like a big deal, but after testing a lot of countertop RO systems, we've come to appreciate it. Many of the dispense-only systems we've tested don't store filtered water at all. So instead, they dispense on demand every time you want a glass. And in our testing, those systems took an average of about 24.5 seconds to dispense a single cup. And dispensing is the only way to access it. With the AquaTru Classic and Bluevua ROPOT, the filtration happens ahead of time. So when you want water, it's already there waiting for you. The AquaTru stores its filtered water in a removable front tank that holds between 10.5 and 12 cups. That's a lot of water for a countertop system. To dispense, there's a simple blue button built into the tank. We found dispensing to be very fast and splash-free with no drip tray required. In our testing, it filled 1 cup in about 3 seconds and 4 cups in roughly 14.5 seconds. One limitation is that the dispensing spout sits only 6.5 inches above the counter, which isn't enough clearance for many water bottles or pitchers or other larger containers. Fortunately, the filtered water tank is removable, and it includes a built-in handles, so you can easily lift it out to fill larger containers or even place the tank directly in the refrigerator. The Bluevua ROPOT takes a different approach by storing filtered water in its removable glass carafe, which holds up to 8 cups. While that's less capacity than the AquaTru, it's still enough to fill a 40-ounce water bottle in one single pour. The carafe is easy to slide in and out, has a comfortable handle, and pours exceptionally well. Even when pouring quickly, we didn't experience any splashing or dribbling. It can also be stored in the refrigerator, and the built-in measurement markings can be a helpful reminder to stay on top of your daily water intake. Another major difference is the material used to store the filtered water. The Classic uses Tritan plastic. AquaTru states that this material is BPA-free, BPS-free, phthalate-free, and free from estrogenic and androgenic activity. That said, we know some of you prefer to avoid storing drinking water in plastic whenever possible, regardless of the type of plastic being used. So if you're in that camp, the AquaTru storage tank may be a drawback. One potential workaround is to transfer the filtered water into a glass container immediately after a filtration cycle, minimizing the amount of time the water spends in the plastic tank. The Bluevua ROPOT takes a different approach. Its filtered water is stored in a borosilicate glass carafe. So for those of you who specifically want to minimize contact between your drinking water and plastic, that's a significant advantage. Okay, a few more numbers from our tests. One full AquaTru Classic filtration cycle took around 13 minutes to process. We measured 17.4 cups for the feed tank, but that can vary depending on how much water you add. And in our wastewater tests, we calculated a ratio of 1 to 0.61. So 0.61 cups or gallons wasted per 1 cup or gallon purified, which falls right into the average of all countertop reverse osmosis systems we've tested so far. Based on this amount of wastewater and the size of the feed tank, we estimate 3 to 4 feed tank refills and full filtration cycles per day for the average sized US households. In contrast, we estimate 4 to 5 daily refills for the ROPOT. That's because A, its feed tank is smaller at around 15.2 cups, and B, it wastes almost twice as much water as the AquaTru Classic. In our tests, we measured an average ratio of 1 to 1.1, so slightly more water wasted than purified. That said, according to Bluevua, the higher wastewater is due to the membrane being auto-flushed, which helps prevent scaling, which makes sense. By the way, you can also trigger the flushing manually. Filtration is faster than with the Classic, and in case you're wondering, you must dispense into the carafe. If it's not installed, the filtration won't start. As for the feed tank refilling itself, it's easy on both systems, especially with the ROPOT, because its tank sits on the back corner of the unit, so it's easily accessible. Both systems have a water change indicator. On the newest version of the Classic, the front display now says empty and refill tap tank. The ROPOT beeps and stops filtering when the feed tank is low or when you forget to dump the wastewater. In terms of dimensions, the two systems are pretty similar and easily fit under standard 18-inch cabinets, but neither system is what we'd call a space saver. The ROPOT is slightly heavier. For looks, we think it also has a more modern appeal than the AquaTru, although it's not like it's super pretty either. Quality-wise, both systems feel good. Only the AquaTru Classic's hinges of the feed tank lid seem as if they might not last over time. There were no issues with filtration noise with either whatsoever. When it comes to filter replacements, it's as simple as the initial setup. The cartridges are easily accessible through the side panels and quickly twist in and out. The Classic's filter life is 600 to 1,200 gallons or 6 months to 2 years, depending on the stage. And remember, those filter lives are based on actual NSF certifications, not just manufacturer claims. The filter life for the ROPOT is 538 to 1,076 gallons or 1 to 2 years, also depending on the filter stage. And while those aren't backed by NSF certification, they do seem very reasonable. Of course, both systems have filter change indicators, and the ROPOT also measures feed and filtered water TDS, so you can use that to track the status of the RO membrane. We found the numbers to be within about 15 to 20 ppm of separate TDS meters, so pretty accurate. And this brings us to the optional features, because the basic AquaTru Classic version does not display TDS, but the upgraded Classic Smart version does for both feed and filtered water with the help of an app. The app is easy to navigate, but unfortunately it doesn't show actual TDS numbers. It only categorizes the water as low, medium, high, or very high. What the app also does is track your total gallons filtered and filter status. It displays usage history, day, week, month, year, and it reminds you to empty wastewater and replace filters. You can also get filter alerts and order replacements. All in all, that's a usability score of 4.24 for the AquaTru Classic, a higher 4.64 for the Classic Smart thanks to its app, and 4.61 for both Bluevua ROPOT and ROPOT UV. Okay, let's talk about another custom feature, this time for the ROPOT, optional remineralization. I mean, you can also get an optional remineralization post filter for the Classic, which replaces the regular carbon post filter. We haven't tested that one yet. But what Bluevua came up with is really cool, because their mineral cartridge sits in the lid of the glass carafe, which means if the carafe is completely filled and thus the mineral cartridge is submerged and you allow it to sit, our test showed that the water will dissolve more minerals than what you'd usually get with a countertop RO system that has the minerals directly integrated into the filtration process, which makes a lot of sense because here contact time between water and filter media is usually very limited. And so we didn't see a whole lot of minerals added in our lab testing. And the same applies to the Bluevua ROPOT if you don't allow the mineral cartridge to stay submerged. In our lab test, we didn't see a meaningful increase in calcium, magnesium, or alkalinity when allowing for minimal contact time. Only pH increased to a very high 9.8. But once again, if you allow for longer submersion, our additional testing showed that you'll get more minerals, which is really cool because with the Bluevua ROPOT, you are in full control of the contact time. Side note, the mineral cartridge lasts 260 gallons or 6 months, although that'll certainly vary by how intense you're using it. Okay, the final custom feature is the UV stage of the upgraded Bluevua RO100ROPOT UV. Now, I don't want to repeat everything we explained in our previous video comparing the Bluevua ROPOT with the ROPOT Lite and their optional UV stages. I'm going to link that video in the description, so make sure to check that out if you're interested. But by speaking directly to Bluevua and the NSF, we could determine that the UV LED being rated at 65 millijoules per square centimeter at 260 to 280 nanometers, it should provide a high enough UV dose to meet NSF standard 55 Class A requirement in that regard, and actually be able to destroy potentially harmful germs, meaning bacteria, viruses, and Cryptosporidium and Giardia in tap water. Think boil water advisory. And thus provide an extra layer of protection. So not just something to up the price, but an additional feature that's actually useful. For regular tap water, which should be free of any concerning germs, the UV shouldn't really be needed, but at only $20 more, why not? We also spent some time looking through third-party customer feedback to see if there were any recurring themes. For the AquaTru Classic, the most common complaints we came across involved units that stopped working unexpectedly, reports of leaking, and dissatisfaction with customer support. We also found a number of app-related complaints from both Android and iOS users, including reports of crashes and filter life tracking issues. That said, we didn't personally experience any of those problems during our testing. For the Bluevua ROPOT, the most common complaints we found were leaking issues, unusually slow filtration speeds, and reports of filtration cycles stopping before they were completed. Finally, let's talk about cost. Starting with the AquaTru lineup, the Classic currently sells for $475, but with our $100 discount linked in the description, that drops to $375. The Classic Smart is currently $525, but that drops to $425 with the same $100 discount linked in the description. The Bluevua ROPOT typically sells for around $389, although pricing can vary. With our 15% discount code, the price comes down to about $330.65. The ROPOT UV usually sells for around $409, and with the same discount code, that drops to about $347.65. Warranty for each system is 1 year. So when it comes to upfront cost, the Bluevua systems are slightly less expensive than the AquaTru models, although we think pricing for all of them is pretty reasonable for what's being offered and compared to the other systems we've tested. Where things start to shift is in the long-term cost of ownership. Based on current replacement filter prices, we estimate annual filter costs of about $86 per year for both the AquaTru Classic and Classic Smart. For the Bluevua ROPOT and its UV version, annual filter costs are closer to $120 per year. And if you use the optional remineralization cartridge, that adds roughly another $34 per year. While the difference may not seem huge at first, recurring costs add up over time, and this is one area where AquaTru has a meaningful advantage. Taking both upfront and long-term costs into account, the AquaTru Classic earns a cost score of 4.54 out of 5, while the Classic Smart earns a nearly identical 4.55. The Bluevua ROPOT and ROPOT UV earn a cost score of 4.35 out of 5. So with filtration weighted at 60%, usability at 20%, and cost at 20%, the AquaTru Classic lands at 4.76 out of 5, and the Classic Smart at 4.84 out of 5, our highest ever, while the Bluevua ROPOT and ROPOT UV both come in at 4.49. All excellent, but that makes the Classic and Classic Smart our top overall countertop RO systems to date. So which one should you buy? Well, for most people, it's the AquaTru Classic, and in our opinion, you'd only go ROPOT for a couple of specific reasons. Here's the breakdown. The AquaTru Classic is our highest rated for filtration thanks to excellent lab results combined with full NSF certification. Genuinely nothing else in this category comes close. And it also wastes about half as much water as the Bluevua ROPOT and is cheaper to run long term. Its main trade-off is storage, Tritan plastic rather than glass. As for the Smart upgrade, it adds useful water quality monitoring and usage tracking, but at an additional $50, it's not a must. Both versions offer equal value at their respective prices, so go Smart only if those features appeal to you. The Bluevua ROPOT is definitely one of the best systems out there and one of our favorites with a glass carafe. And it's the one we'd point you to if the Classic isn't for you. You'd choose it specifically if you want glass storage over plastic or its clever remineralization approach that puts you in full control of contact time, as long as you're okay trading away full NSF certification to get them. That certification gap is its main shortcoming, just 2 pending certifications versus the Classic's full slate. And it also wastes more water, holds a bit less, and costs more to run long term. As for the UV upgrade, which adds $20 to the price tag, the dose is high enough to meaningfully protect against harmful germs, bacteria, viruses, cryptosporidium, and giardia in something like a boiled water advisory. Not a must for everyday tap, but an easy yes if you want that extra safety net. All right. Don't forget to check the video description for our AquaTru discount links and our Bluevua discount code, plus our full countertop RO comparison sheet with all the lab data. And if this video helped you out, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. That way you won't miss the next one where we put the smaller AquaTru Carafe and Bluevua ROPOT Lite head to head. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.